back in our notes and we're going to look at how to do proofs with those triangle shortcuts that you guys just practiced with. So the proofs are going to be set up the same way they have been. The given's going to be in the first step and the prove is going to be in the last step. And notice now that I'm trying to get triangles to be twins. So all those little shortcuts we had before, we're going to be using in these proofs because we don't need 6 parts, we only need 3. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the given and I'm going to go to the picture and mark it. So if D is the midpoint of AC, I'm going to use that to mark it in the picture. So if D is the midpoint, then I know that these two pieces are going to match each other. So I'm going to mark that. And then it also tells us that angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those as right angles. Now, this is going to be a silly story that helps you remember it, but I'm going to start it by saying this. So there is a lady who's going to have babies, and the babies she's going to have are actually triangles, which would really hurt if you had a triangle baby. If you're a female, you probably could figure out why that would hurt. But a triangle baby is going to be born, but actually not just one triangle. She's going to end up having 2 triangle babies, all right? And they are going to be twins. Whether she's expecting it or not, 2 are going to come out, and we're going to be in charge of naming them and then telling somebody why they're twins. Okay, now when you have a baby, I'm sure all the boys know this, that there are 3 trimesters to having a baby. So you have like the first 3 months, and the second 3 months, and the third 3 months. And that's a first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. So that's going to follow what we do here because if you think about all the shortcuts, we need 3 things. ASA, SSS, SAS, or AAS. So those all have 3 letters, so those are the trimesters. And then once we get our 3 trimesters, then the babies will be born because we have enough to make them twins. So follow that pattern and think about that as we do this. So we need 3 congruent pieces. So we're going to go to the fact that we have a midpoint. So if D is the midpoint of AC, then we could say that segment AD is congruent to segment DC. And the reason we would be able to say that is on this green sheet that you guys have, or whatever color it might be for you if you're at home, we are going to be using the definition of midpoint, which we've used before. It's a point that creates 2 congruent segments. Okay, so we say that's the definition of midpoint. So what we're going to do with that is we are going to label that trimester 1. We've had the first 3 months. The lady already has a set of congruencies, so she's done with that. And we've marked it in the picture. Next, it says that 1 and 2 are right angles, so we need to get something from that. Well, if you go to your cheat sheet, we're going to use something that we looked at early on in the year, but we've never really used in a proof. It's kind of like VOC, but it's VOC's cousin, who is ROC. So VOC is related to ROC. ROC says right angles are congruent, just like VOC says vertical angles are congruent. So if right angles are congruent, we could say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and that would be by the reason that right angles are congruent, which is VOC's cousin, which is ROC. So you could say it the same way, or you can write out right angles are congruent. Okay, that is our second trimester because we have a congruent sign and we have 2 sets of body parts. Make sure you mark them in your picture as congruent, which I already did. Now, we're out of givens. We've used this given and we've used this given. So we're out of givens, so we have to go find a trimester on our own. So we go to the picture and we realize that we have a shared segment. So we're going to double tick the shared segment. And that is going to be our third set of body parts. So we're going to say segment BD is congruent to segment BD. And we're going to call that reflexive because the reflexive property says that someone is congruent to itself. Now, that is my third trimester. So think about the story. She had 3 months, now she's up to 6 months, now she's had 9 months. At the end of 9 months, this lady rushes to the hospital and out pops 2 new baby triangles. And they need to be named. But when we name them, we have to name them in order. So for instance, Mr. Ween is a twin. His name's Mark. His brother's Matt. And it's so cute. It's 4 letters, 4 letters. And they match up, Mark and Matt. So when you name these twins, the lady is going to name the first one usually for you, and you have to name the second one. So let's go to your picture. B, D, A. And remember that order matters. So you've got to think of the angle that matches with B and the other triangle. So that's going to be another B. And then D, and then C. Now I've got all my body parts matching up, and this is called a congruence statement, like we did on the front page. Now, I got to go to my picture and decide why they're twins. It has to be one of the valid reasons, one of the 4 reasons that we talked about earlier. Cover up the picture. This is side, angle, side. Check it for both. Side, angle, side. The angle is between the 2 sides, and that is the reason why those are twins. Now your story's complete. She can go home and hang out with her babies. Okay? All right, so we're going to do the same thing on number 3. We're going to take the lady. She's going to have 3 trimesters, and then out's going to pop the twins, the twin babies. Okay, so let's take the given and go ahead and put it in the picture. So DS gets an arrow, and OG gets an arrow. That means they're parallel. That's how you mark parallel. And then it says DS is also congruent to OG, so we're going to tick them as well. So they should have arrows and ticks on them. All right, so I'm going to take my very first given, and I'm going to use it to find something else that's a congruence. I guess what I should do, honestly, is look at this guy. This is the first trimester. And we're going to go ahead and mark that because it has a congruent sign. And so if it has a congruent sign, that counts as one of the first ones. That's a bonus because they gave it to us. So we will need to find 2 more. All right, so we're going to use the parallels to find another one. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you don't have a highlighter, it's no big deal. You're just going to darken in. I want you to darken in or color in the parallel lines that are on your paper. So I'm going to use my highlighter, but you can just use your pen or pencil. And then I also want you to darken in the transversal, the one that connects those 2 lines. Now, what you're going to see is a Z or an N, however you want to think of it, and it's going to show you which angles need to match. So if those are the angles that are highlighted, check this out. Angle 1 is highlighted. See how it has the yellows on it? And angle 2 is highlighted. So I'm going to put arc marks on 1 and 2. I cannot put arc marks on 3 and 4. That's because the top is not parallel to the bottom. I do not know that. So you're not allowed to use 3 and 4. So over here I'm going to say I was given step 1. And I'm going to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Now I have to think about why that would happen. And so on here, you don't have your, oh yeah, you do. I didn't think I put them on here. You're going to have a couple of things on here that have to do with angles. And so this is the AIA theorem. We used it last chapter. We know our lines are parallel. And when we know our lines are parallel, that's going to mean the alternate interior angles are congruent. So you're going to be using the AIA theorem. We learned that last chapter. That's going to come back into play. That is the second trimester. So we have 2 congruencies. Now, I'm going to X out my givens. We've used everything in the given. So you have to come up with another one on your own. So it's kind of like the proof we just did. They have a shared segment, these triangles. So we're going to double tick the shared segment. And we're going to put that in our proof. So we're going to say segment SO is congruent to segment SO. Or you could say OS is congruent to OS. And that is called reflexive. And that is our 3rd trimester. So now think about what happens in the story. There's 1 set of congruents, 2 sets of congruents, 3 sets of congruents. She rushes to the hospital and she's going to have the babies. So in the last line are going to be the babies. Triangle Sod. What a great name for a kid. So if you were going to name your kid Sod, then his brother or sister would need to be named in the correct order. So we go over to the picture. They're going S to O to D. So you got to be very careful. We went alternate interior to the one that wasn't one that we used to this corner. So we would have to go, if we go SOD, we'd have to go OSG. So this would be OSG. So these get kind of confusing because if I go up the transversal and to the left, then I have to go down the transversal and to the right to match them up. Now we're going to go figure out why they're twins. So I'm going to cover up the bottom triangle and I'm going to notice that the angle is included between the equal sides. So I think about what shortcut that would be, and I look at both triangles, and I notice that I have SAS. So that means that they're twins by side angle side. Now, if you don't mark your picture as you go, then you'll be mad because at the end you'll have no idea why they're twins. So make sure that you mark these little pieces in your picture as you go. All right? Okay, so we're going to look at one more, and that's going to be number 4. And so in this one, we have bisectors, and they are segment bisectors. So right now, before I even start, I'm going to go to my cheat sheet here, and I'm going to look at what it says for a segment bisector. A line, ray, or segment that passes through the midpoint. It's going to give me a midpoint. So if you guys can see that segment bisector definition, it gives you a midpoint. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's go to the picture. So AE and BD bisect each other. Okay, if they bisect each other, then C is going to be the midpoint based on that definition. So I'm going to say C is the midpoint of AE, and C is the midpoint of BD. So if they bisect each other, then I get 2 midpoints. And that is definition of segment bisector, which was the definition I just read to you. Okay, now we have midpoints. Now we got to go see what a midpoint does. Well, we just practiced this. A midpoint, if you look at your definition of midpoint again, it makes 2 congruent segments. It's on your cheat sheet right there. All right, so let's see what segments would be congruent. So if C is the midpoint of AE, then AC is going to be congruent to CE. And if C is the midpoint of BD, then BC will be congruent to CD. And the reason is that's what the definition of a midpoint does. All right, now we need to pause here. First of all, we need to go to our picture and make sure we've marked everything. So I put tick, tick on these. I'm going to do double tick on those. Second, I have to stop and think of how many trimesters I have. I mean, this lady doesn't want to have more than 3 trimesters or less than 3. So there's 1 trimester because that's 1 congruence. There's 2 trimesters, that's 2 congruencies. So she doesn't want to have the babies yet or they'll be super preemie. They'll be 3 months early. So you need 1 more trimester in order for her to have a full term set of twins. So you are out of given. You've used everything in the given. So you go to your picture and you find something else that's legal to use. And that would be the vertical angles. You are allowed to use those. So you're going to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. And the reason is VOC. And if you don't remember VOC, VOC is up here next to ROC. VOC is the vertical angle theorem that says vertical angles are congruent. Okay, now make sure you mark those in your picture. It's so annoying when you get to the end of a problem and you don't have it all marked. So mark those with arcs, and then bam, this lady is done. 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Next part of the story, she gets through 3 trimesters, she goes and has her babies. All right, we got to name them. So she named the first one A, B, C. So be very careful because you went down this side, but then you went down the side that has 2 ticks. So keep in mind these have been flipped. So you can't really see my hands, but you're like flipping the triangles. They're flipped. So if I go A, B, C, then I have to go triangle E, C, D. So A, B, C matches with E, D, C. Oops, I said that wrong. E, D, C. So A, B, C, E, D, C. All right, now go up to your picture and see why you think the shortcut works. The angle is included between the sides, so this is SAS for why they're twins. Okay, so you guys are going to finish the ones we skipped in this packet, and then we're going to have you check them.